Hi, and welcome back to Non-Compete. I am American Johnson, and today's episode is a little bit different than usual. We had our very first interview for the program, and I sat down for about an hour with a guy named Patrick. He founded the first Marxist-Leninist demonstration of South Carolina, and I've been visiting my hometown, which is in South Carolina, so I took the opportunity to meet up with a fellow leftist and talk to him about what he's doing with his organization. Now, as a Marxist-Leninist, Patrick has a slightly different ideology than I do myself. I'm more of an anarcho-communist, where he's more of a traditional Marxist-Leninist. If you're not sure what the heck I'm talking about, you can go check out my video on the political compass, which goes into a little bit about the differences between what we call the top left and the bottom left. But when I sat down and talked to Patrick, I realized, we agree about more than we disagree about, and I'm a big believer in leftist unity, so that's why I invited him on the program. There is oftentimes some animosity between Marxist-Leninists and anarcho-communists and all the other different sects of the left. That's called sectarianism, and I'm very opposed to sectarianism in general because I believe that we as the left need to come together and not be divided, especially since the capitalist imperialist machines of the world are all trying very hard to divide the working class and to divide the people. So anyway, this is the interview with Patrick, and I hope you enjoy the very first interview on Non-Compete. Take it away, Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I represent the first Marxist-Leninist demonstration of South Carolina. We are actually a very productive state. South Carolina has a GDP somewhere in the middle when it comes to the states relative to each other. But our health and our education is towards the very bottom, which I think shows that while we produce a lot, we produce it for other people, and we don't get the rewards that we work for. There's an interesting statistic that I learned about our taxes. For every $1 that we spend on federal taxes in South Carolina, we actually receive $7 in federal aid from the federal government, which is bizarre, first of all. Why would they spend so much money to support a drowning state by the looks of it if we need that much help and we don't pay anything in taxes? That $7, or I guess net $6 that we get, is corporate aid. We have chain restaurants and chain stores, manufacturing companies owned in other states. At the end of the day, all that money leaves South Carolina. All the profit is just gone, and we make it. And it's taking the surplus value away, and it's gone, and South Carolina gets poorer. If you have convinced South Carolina that we deserve to be poor, that we're a state that just is poor because we're dumb or whatever it might be, then you have corporations that can pay less. Their reward for finding a state to super exploit, like South Carolina, is the federal government funnels food stamps and welfare and everything so that corporations can keep paying people less, and they justify it with our low cost of living. While one interesting thing about South Carolina is we have the same purchasing power or a close purchasing power to the country of Indonesia. This is a state that is kept poor because it's very profitable to have such cheap labor that they do in South Carolina. If we owned huge corporations that operated in other states, we would be losing money the way we are now, but we would also be getting money back. Right now, we're just losing money. There really aren't a lot of, there are definitely some, but there aren't a lot of huge corporations that bring money into South Carolina. And yes, it is treating South Carolina as a second world colony almost. And corporations are making money off that. South Carolina is notorious for its conservative politics. We're the last to adopt a lot of policies that we would consider progressive. One thing about South Carolina and about the people that consider themselves Republican even today, there is a sentiment of wanting things to change in a radical way. People see liberal candidates and thus liberal politics as a very elitist kind of thing. South Carolina doesn't have a reputation for being a very upper class state. The population, we live at our means and we do what we do. I think that the energy that got Trump elected is a directionless energy. People are upset, they don't really know how to focus that, so when you have somebody as bold as Donald Trump come out, there's a good chance, especially if he labels himself a conservative, to get everybody behind him. If you can take that energy and grow it and see if you can get a direction going with it. There's a very good chance for getting unity across what's now the political spectrum. It's hard to change someone's mind, it always is, and I have this experience from talking to people. You can get them to agree with every single thing out of a list of how many things, and then you use the word socialism, and all of a sudden you're trying to have a conversation about the Soviet Union or Venezuela. It's because when you say a word like socialism, it activates the part of the brain that just says socialism is bad. So if you say socialism is good 150 times in a row, it doesn't change anyone's mind. So I think to take it a step back and focus on very concrete, direct issues and say, doesn't this sound better? They've built up this frame of, here's these social programs, what do I call it? And then you say, this is socialism. When it comes down to, honestly, this is a socialist organization, and what I've been talking to you about is socialism. Then you start to flip that frame over. But I do think that we need to be very proud of the word socialism, and we need to put that one out there as directly as possible. To use the term Marxist-Leninist in the title of the demonstration is partly to shock people, or to get them to look at it, to pay attention. And it also is desensitizing, because you can say socialism all day long, but if you don't have, what is the concrete idea that somebody could look up if they were curious about it. I think it'd be easier to explain Marxism and Leninism to people than to just say socialist too much, because you have to have specifics. Leninism, in the time of Lenin, he was under feudal Russia and battling a literal king, and the way to do that was with extreme secrecy and violence when it came to it, because that was the only thing that the Tsarist government understood and things like that. There were moderates who wanted a parliamentary king, and Lenin said, no, absolutely not, we're going to take this apart, we're going to build it new. And I think that's what does need to happen in South Carolina right now, but in a very different way. We're not going to go strong-arm people out of their buildings and do that. Whether it can be done through elections, which are more or less fair in America, or if it takes subverting the government in a democratic people's way. Both of them are Leninism. And you don't have to be firing a gun in the air or coercing people to establish the vanguard party that will come to power. I think Leninism today is really just the rules for establishing education of working class people and organization of the organization. When it comes to intersectionality in South Carolina, and really anywhere in America, intersectional oppression is much more a symptom of capitalism than it is a social phenomenon. There's the idea in capitalism, when you start to learn about the socialist perspective on capitalism, of super exploitation. And there's exploitation, which any socialist can talk all day about, where you go to work and you produce value and a chunk of that is taken. Super exploitation, on the other hand, relies on the division of people. So when you create a second-class citizen, when you create people that have no choice but to work for even less than the people around them, it is honestly good for a capitalist economy. So you have women being paid less, you have minorities being paid less, and treated less fairly because they have less of a voice to begin with. So if you stretch that division even further, we'll see more women and minorities getting paid less and less. And that's going to be great for business, unfortunately, which is a terrible thing, something that should shock anybody. So again, the intersectionality of oppression is directly a symptom of a capitalist society. Because if you think about it, why would anybody have a problem with people of other races, or why would men have a problem with women? It doesn't make sense, because we're all humans. How could you say it's normal that we could hate groups of other human beings? And I think that it comes down to alienation. We just feel separated. South Carolina has an enormous amount to gain from socialist ideas. We're an exploited state, and we want to end that exploitation. Does being an exploited state make the people of the state suffer? Absolutely. Our work lives aren't up to us. Our democracy is barely up to us at all. Engagement in politics directly right away, something that would be done right from the beginning with either a new government or a very, very changed government, of course that would be huge for South Carolinians. And eventually getting to the goal of social ownership of our factories and our restaurants, to where the money produced in South Carolina stays in South Carolina. It's that simple. We're a state that right now we think we're on our knees, but we're not. And all we have to do is our perception of ourselves, lift that up, and we'll realize where we're at. There are a lot of very easy, very small projects that could immediately start making South Carolina a much better place to be in. It would be good to not be seen as a state that is on the verge of drowning at all times, because we're not. We produce a lot in South Carolina.
Hi, it's me again one last time. Just wanted to thank Patrick for agreeing to come on the program and share his views. And if you want to get in touch with Patrick or get involved with the first Marxist-Leninist demonstration of South Carolina, you can search for that name on Facebook. That's where you'll find the group. Or, of course, I'll put resources for getting in contact with him in the description of this video. If you want to get in touch with me, you can always leave a comment below, smash that old subscribe button, or you can go to my website at non-compete.com and find more fun, exciting information and ways to engage with me on social media. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next week with more exciting communist agitation propaganda. Bye for now.